Thank you very much for joining our rally this evening around increasing gate money. So to get started, again, thank you for joining us tonight where we'll talk about increasing gate money. Without the means to cover daily expenses, thousands of New Yorkers who are returning from incarceration quickly find themselves at risk of hunger, homelessness, supervision violations, and ultimately revocation. Thus is the critical need for immediate income when being released. So I'd like to start with a poll right now. I hope everyone will be able to access the poll. And we're gonna ask the question, in your opinion, what do you think is the average daily cost of survival in the United States? So the poll is gonna pop up and do your best guess at estimating the daily survival costs living in the US. All right, there it is. The poll should have popped up. Please do your best to answer what is the average daily cost of survival in the United States. So I'll give it 30 seconds for everyone to answer. See, Anthony and Melanie's got a number right in the chat. Go ahead and select one of the answers that your number rate falls in the range. You're right, Simone, too much. All right, another 5 seconds and we'll close the. All right, so we'll close the poll now. And are we able to see some of the responses? All right, so as you can see, about 33% of us chose the last answer of E, more than $100. And you are absolutely correct. The average daily cost of survival is more than $100 per day in the United States. And this leads us to the problem that we're facing. Across the country, many states release people from incarceration with gate money, a nominal amount of dollars, usually a reserve from someone's own income. And this ranges from 0 to 200, depending on the state. In New York State, 20,000 people leave incarceration each year with just a mere $40. So if we go back to that question, right, we all chose more than 100. And yet when people are coming home in New York State, they're given $40. As you can imagine, $40 is hardly sufficient to cover the immediate necessities to assist an individual to return to their community. The majority of justice-impacted individuals experience significant financial obligations ranging from housing, fines, fees, family support, and the list can go on. Urgency, debt, and uncertainty cover the experience for most of individuals leaving incarceration. It should be no surprise then that New York is among the states with the worst recidivism rates in the nation. In New York, 43% of people released from prison eventually return. And this is not a given. This is the case because we have failed to provide individuals the meaningful support they need to actually resume their lives. CEO, with our partners at Fortune and Osborne, we want to change this. And we want to challenge the state of New York to provide and increase gate money. During this event, you will hear directly from experts who can highlight this long overdue reform better than anyone. You will also have an opportunity to support our campaign and to introduce a bill to support our campaign to introduce a bill during next year's legislative session. So to kick things off, I'm going to pass it over to one of my great colleagues, Ken Edwards.
Thank you, Cynthia. And again, welcome everyone that's in attendance today. My name is Ken Edwards. I'm the manager for leadership and organizing here at CEO. And I'm also located in New York City along with Cynthia. Today, in this portion, we're going to talk to two individuals who are advocates in the field of criminal justice reform. Part of the work we do here at CEO as organizers is to engage in deep storytelling. We believe it is crucial that advocates become champions of their own stories to lead the work of building new narratives. Joining me today is Errol Flynn and Joseph Soto. I'm going to engage them in a dialogue over the next few minutes. And I'm going to first give them an opportunity to adequately introduce themselves. First up is Errol Flynn, who's actually calling in from Denver, Colorado, but is a native New Yorker. Errol?
All righty. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, my name is Errol Flynn, no relations to the actor. Born and raised in New York, moved here to Colorado in 2016. I've been directly impacted with being involved in the justice system. However, that has not stopped me from moving forward and being part of the charge with justice reform. Right. I have 4 felonies, 101 misdemeanors, and today I'm a director of a program. Right. I direct a reentry program here in Colorado called Second Chance Center. I direct the case management, which means that I direct the staff that are facing the public. We see who's coming in, and I'm charged with ensuring that they're welcomed, that they feel valued, they're heard, and that their needs to the best of our abilities are met. In a manner in which promotes positive regard. Let me rephrase that. Unconditional positive regard. And the reason why I rephrase that is because we have folks that came in who are people who have to register, people who have committed murder, a host of criminal offenses, right? And what we'd like to say, right, we look at the person and not the history of the person as it relates to what they may have been charged with or convicted of, right? We're not here to ask about what, did you do it? Did you not do it? That is not our concern. Our concern is how can we help you build or rebuild your life? I don't know if I need to say any more in the moment.
Thank you. And next, I'm going to turn it over to another great individual in the field of advocacy and organizing, Joseph.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My name is Joseph Soto. Currently, I'm working at the Fortune Society as a care management liaison and community healthcare worker. I actually work for the Health Justice Network and the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, but I'm stationed here within Fortune. And what I do is basically I work with anybody and everybody that was formerly incarcerated and helping them get their lives in order in whatever shape or fashion that is. Everybody's lived experience is different. They're coming from different perspectives and lives, and I try to meet them where they at, find out what they need, and help guide them to understand certain things that they don't know that may help them along the way, and work with them from there. Primarily with healthcare, but also with reentry, and that's what I do. Like you always said, we don't judge nobody. We accept them for who they are. I myself have I got one felony, but it took most of my life away from me. At the age of at a teenager, I went in as a teenager, came out in my early 40s, you know, and I was fortunate enough to have fortune to let me come into their lives when I came home, because that was the biggest transition in my life to get my life in order. They seen more in me than I saw in myself, believe it or not. When I came home, I thought I was going to be just like everybody, getting into the labor force and maybe working in construction but they saw in me, based on my lived experiences and what I was doing in prison, that I could be better doing something else.
Mhm.
And they got me into working in the health department, and I've been working there ever since. But stationed here at Fortune, we're working with a phenomenal team of, well, let me say a phenomenal teams, because we got a lot of teams here that we work together in different departments, and it's amazing working with the people here, and that's what I do. I could go on and on, but I'm gonna leave it at that for now.
Thank you both for attending this event today. I can't tell you how much it means to hear your narratives, you know, of success, and a lot of hearts have gone up, hands and thumbs up to the both of you. And both of you have answered the first question that I was going to ask you. Can you tell us about what you do? But the second part to that question is, can you tell me why? Why have you chosen this field? I know about the incarceration, but can you elaborate a little more as to why this journey? And I'll go back to you, Joseph.
Um, why is a loaded question, because there is so much to give in that one question. But I'm going to focus it on two aspects. One, the bill itself. You know, when I came home from, I was scared to death. I didn't know what to do, where to begin, how to proceed, and everything was so expensive. I was told how it was, but I didn't know it until I actually came out here. And the little bit of change I had in my pocket, that was gone in an instant. You know, I tried to stretch it out, but it was barely able to do that. Fortunately, I was able to get into Fortune, and they were able to help me with the substantial, as far as finding a place to stay. They got a bed for me. They have food for me. They had people to guide me. They had my back, clothes and everything. I mean, they had everything for me. So that was a good starting point for me. And you know, it's important that people understand that that I was fortunate to come home with Fortune, but not everybody get that chance. You know, and I work with people on a daily basis that they struggling substantially in every shape or form. You know, and a lot of times they relapse because they don't know how to deal with all the stress. And if we able to help them in the beginning stages a little more, I believe there will be a substantial difference. And the second part of the reason I want to answer that question is, I do what I do because of the people that came before me that worked hard, like you guys are working hard here to change laws. To I would have still been in prison another 10, 15, 20 years if it wasn't for the people that came before me and worked hard to get me out of prison without even knowing who I was. You know, and it's only my duty to pay it forward. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Thank you. And Errol, I see you nodding your head.
Well, you know, there are a lot of similarities, you know. I would say first and foremost, you know, as a person, and there are some differences as well, right? So as Mr. Soto said, you know, he went in at an early age and came out a middle-aged American, I would say, a middle-aged citizen, right? So I went in at an early age and I had these various stints, right? And in between these stints of incarceration, right, I came out, look forward to that $40 so I can go back out to the world of madness, right? I want to disclose a little bit, right? And like substance use was a part of my story, a huge part of my story, right? And you know, with, you know, coupled with no resources in prison, right? No programming in prison for a person like myself, or And when they had it, I wasn't too interested in it. I got to be totally transparent, right? That $40 was just not enough to change my direction, but just enough to get my, what I thought was my party started again, right? And so, you know, or if I went and got something to eat, right, it was almost all gone. And so what else did I have? I didn't have the know-how nor the self-humility to go to a program like Fortune Society or Osborne or all these different, these great programs that are readily available for folks returning from incarceration. So I went back to where I was before I went in. That $40 just was not enough for me to start anything over again, right? It was gone longer than it took for me to get home from Sing Sing. It was gone longer than it took for me to get home from Kaksaki. It was gone long enough before I came home from any of those institutions downstate, wherever I was at when I was released. But it took me longer to get home from those institutions than it did for me to spend that $40, right? Like, go figure why the recidivism rate is so high, right? We're not given a fighting chance. Right. And on top of that, the folks, and this may be going into another area, but the folks such as parole officers, you know, they're here to supposed to help someone, you know, stay on the right path, but they have all these great expectations and very little resources. Right. And you're left with this $40 to get to this appointment, to get to that appointment, to pay for this urine, for this, to pay for that. And how am I supposed to stay in compliance if I don't have the financial stability to do any of that? Any of that. So what did I do? I went back to what was familiar, the streets. You know, I went back to becoming a menace of society, right? And going to prison was then at some point, let me chalk it up to the game. You know, what game was I playing if that was the doggone response or the outcome? What game was I playing? You know, and I'm so glad today I'm no longer in that rat race trying to figure out why, you know, what that game was actually. So what I decided to do this time was get out of my way and allow a place called Housing Works, right, to assist me in being connected to some programming, right? And that's where my role began. You know, I wanted to turn back around and help somebody as opposed to turn back around and pull somebody into some mess, right? What a difference a day makes. What a difference it makes with me getting out of my way, right? However, I understand that that's my story and it's not a lot of folks' story. And some of the people's stories are the same as my prior stories. It's not enough money to do anything. I don't know where any resources at. I don't have the ability to go anyplace. So what I do is I advocate. You know, we go into these prison systems, we talk to folks and things like that about the services that are available. However, we still forget the folks who don't know about these systems or don't want to go to these places. They still need to have a fighting chance. So $40 burns through my pocket, and I can go to this. Let me go get a lunch. A lunch could be $30-something with the tip. I'm done. I'm done. You know, like I'm walking wherever I can go on and on. Let me just be quiet. Stop.
So I want to be mindful of time, but thank you for that transparency. And that's what someone else had wrote in the chat. Thank you for that transparency and forthcoming with your stories. And you answered some of the questions, both of you, like when was the first time you heard of gate money, as well as what were your expectations for that $40, you know, and you might have expectations for that $40 and then a blink of an eye, it's gone, you know, and then you have to try to figure out how to provide for yourself, how to survive. Today, you're both successful professionals. And, you know, if you could give back to the community, what would you do? What would you give them? And what would you tell them about the importance of gate money?
Who do you want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Come on, Joseph.
One of the things I would do is, I'm a peer at heart, right? And I think one of the things I would work on the most is to put more peers out there, more people like ourselves, to communicate with people like ourselves, to let them know that we too been through that. We too have came out of those trenches. And if we could do it, you could do it. and we're willing to work with you to do it. I think that's what is needed the most. There's not enough peers out there. There's not enough of us that's coming home that did a lot of good work while they was inside, but they're not out here doing the good work out here because it's not available to them, you know, and when they make it available, is at minimum wage, is at barely livable wages, and that's and it's sad. So yeah, that's what I would do. That's one of the first things I would do. But there's a lot of areas of work, but that's for me, that because I'm up here at heart, that's one of the first things I would do.
So Errol, give me your 30-second pitch.
Listen, I don't know about the elevator pitch, but I'm gonna try. Right? You know, so I'm gonna ditto everything that Joseph said. You know, we need more folks, more boots on the ground, right? We need more folks advocating, right? What I would do is what I'm doing right now, right? We're meeting folks at the prison, right? Before that itch gets in them. We're meeting folks when we go in 6 months prior, communicate with them about their options here. If they don't want to come with us, there's other folks there from other agencies, but we're meeting them there. We're bringing them back to our agencies. We're getting them out of their gear. We're humanizing the fact that they're home. We're making them feel like they're part immediately. That first 42, 24, 78 out, whatever that 72 hours is so crucial, right? With the decision-making with folks that's hitting the streets, right? We have to make sure that we grab them up, snatch them up, intervene, go get them, give them everything we can do, we can get, you know. And I got 2 seconds left, right? What happened was I got in a van that took me to an agency.
Okay.
In that van, people were sitting there talking about how they're going to pool together those pennies, because $40 is pennies, those pennies that we had, right? And so many times I was a part of that conversation. In the back of that van, I was quiet, I was rocking and rolling, and I told you I was a frequent flyer, right? So the guy that was driving the van knew me by my name, and he was like, Flynn, what's going on? And all I could say was, get me where I need to go. Because I was so used to stopping, when it stopped at the red light, I would jump out, you know, and start that rat race again. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to make a decision and take the road less traveled for folks like me, right?
Thank you,
Only
Errol.
because I got out of my way. So I would empower people to get out of their way.
Thank you. And to sum it up, you know, in a couple of words, both of you, why do you think the state should increase gate money?
Let me go first so I could be short, okay? Because inflation. Because folks that's been caught away from a while, they don't know the value of money, some folks, you know. There's a host of reasons. I can't even think of all of them right now. I'm sort of stuck, and it's not me to be stuck, but there's so many, it gives folks an opportunity to maybe meet up with their family and not feel like everybody got to give me something, or I don't have anything to contribute. People have family members that it's not like I'm coming home and giving my kids all of my money that I got from the gate, but I'm able to buy a soda pop or an ice cream cone or a teddy bear on the way home to my wife, or a bouquet of flowers to someone who suffered as I was away. Those little things that mean so much, folks are not able to do with that $40.
Thank you, Errol. Thank you.
And I appreciate that, Earl. I really do. It all depends on how much you're talking about. Because what you're going to increase it 20, 30 bucks, or you're going to increase it substantially enough where a person could actually do something with it. You know what I mean? Put it away for rent, or put it away to get some clothes on their back, or, you know, it all depends exactly on what we're talking about and what the legislators are actually going to do. If they're going to give us a couple of more pennies, then it's not going to be enough. But if they're going to give us a paycheck or two, then yes, this is something that what our formerly incarcerated needs to get them that head start. You know what I mean? To get them into at least a room, that hold them down for a couple of weeks so they could figure it out, get to organizations like us to help them figure it out, rather than stick them in the shelters where they, most of them it's like going back into prison, and downhill sometimes, or most of the time. So it all depends on what we're talking about and how much we're talking about.
All right. Thank you, Joseph, and thank you, Errol. On behalf of CEO and all those in attendance, we want to thank the two of you for elevating your voices with us. I know there is emotional moments right now, but I definitely want to thank both of you for being transparent, honest and courageous at the same time, and carrying this torch. So thank you both. Before I turn it over to my colleague, Simone, we're going to ask your thoughts on another poll, and take your best guess, at this estimate. If you had to start over with nothing at all, and rebuild your life after incarceration, how much do you think it would cost? And while you answer this, I'll turn it over to Simone.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. We've got a poll up right now to ask you, if you had to start over right now, how much do you think it would cost? We learned earlier that the cost of survival is well over $100 a day. So the point of us having this event and bringing these people here to raise this call to challenge the state of New York is because if we want to change reentry for justice-involved people like myself, we're going to have to create more resources. There's just no way around that. And CEO and some of our partners who you'll also get to hear from today, Fortune Society, as well as Osborne Association, are calling on the state of New York to do something about needing necessary resources and distributing cash support for folks who are trying to rebuild their lives after incarceration. We'll close this poll in just one moment, but want to keep seeing some of these answers come in. The truth is that providing people support, meaningful support, enough to do something with, enough to cover the cost of expenses is really not a radical idea. And we are certainly not the first people to work towards trying to introduce it at the state level as legislation. In fact, there's a guest that I'm going to bring up with me really quickly to talk to you a little bit more about an attempt that was made in California that her organization supported last year, as well as CEO. It's really inspiring to see the momentum happening across different states that are all having issues with these broken reentry systems and trying to do something about it. So to take us into the next portion of our event, I'm actually going to call up two really important guests. One is Gail Yen, the State Policy Director of Root and Rebound. And then next is Jassy Heaton, Director of Workforce Development for the Osborne Association. We're going to talk a little bit more about the gate money bill in California last legislative session. And then we're also going to talk about the advocacy needed to keep this momentum going forward. So I'll close this poll and share the results with folks. And really quickly, Gail and Jassy, maybe starting with you first, Gail, can you talk just a little bit about your role within your organization and let people know what you do?
Yeah, totally. Welcome, everyone. So like Simone said, I am the California Policy Director with Root and Rebound. We're actually headquartered in Oakland, California, but we have offices in Fresno, Los Angeles, and in South Carolina. And so Root and Rebound's work is that we are a legal service nonprofit that provides supports for formerly incarcerated people with conviction histories, and systems impacted people who are in the reentry process and are facing civil legal issues that are caused by their conviction history. And so we provide free legal services to people who are coming home and their families. And we also have an in-prison roadmap to reentry program that would help people who are anticipating release prepare for the successful transition period that lies ahead. And so release allowance, all of that, and trying to navigate the parole probation system, trying to navigate just housing supports, all of that is incorporated into our reentry program that we provide for folks inside.
Well, thank you. Jassy?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening. Happy to be here to join you all. My name is Jassy Heaton, as mentioned earlier, Director of Workforce Development. Osborne Association is an organization that works with men, women, and families and communities impacted by the criminal legal system. And we do that through technical assistance, education, and direct services in jails, communities, and prisons. One of the things that I'm proud about is that after so long in being home for 20 years, having the opportunity to really engage conversations that really affect individuals closer to the door. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a returning citizen, so it's really important for folks to understand how important this topic is for us to be engaged in. So I'm excited. Osborne is excited because we're an organization that started with advocacy, so it's great to be part of this conversation. So I want to say thank you for having us here.
For sure. You both represent really well-known and really impactful organizations. So for folks who weren't familiar with some of the work that we're really trying to replicate essentially here in New York, Gail, can you talk a little bit maybe about how Root and Rebound was involved or even came to learn about gate money reform or support, if that was already something that was on your radar as an organization to uplift? And if not, kind of how did it come to your attention?
Yeah. So yeah, gate money release allowance was something we had already known. And it was interesting because actually one of our partner organizations, Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, and All of Us or None, were one of the I guess like leaders in trying to increase this amount through Senator Skinner. And she's been an ally for criminal legal reform work, and she's an ally with all of our organizations here. And so she wanted to do something about it because she knew that yes, we actually do get $200 for folks who are coming home, which is more than $40 that New York gets. But that amount was not enough. And so when Legal Services and I would say LSPC and All of Us or None were moving forward with that, they brought us into the space just because we provide free legal reentry services. And a lot of folks were coming to us about the increase in release allowance and the need for it. And so we just thought it made sense to be able to join forces. And so with that, we also created the Gate Money Coalition, where we wanted to try to make it more holistic, because we thought this would be a great opportunity to not only release or to not only increase gate money, but also to make sure that transportation costs are separate from the release allowance, to also make sure that folks are getting and signing up for their Medi-Cal and their social benefits and public benefits, and that they're getting their SSI. We thought this would be a great opportunity to do all of those things inclusive in one large budget package. Which is why we decided to form the Gate Money Coalition, where we would bring together not only the usual criminal legal reform folks, but also food policy advocates and public benefit advocates, and just thought that by having a larger and stronger coalition that we would make more noise and make more emphasis on the need to provide these more wraparound services, including the increase in release allowance. So that's how our work got started and how we got involved in it.
I appreciate you sharing that, because like what I pulled away from that was not just the coalition part, but like the diversity of the coalition, because we're talking about an issue that involves all of these different areas, all of these intergenerational poverty challenges that just also happen to affect people who are coming home. So it's not a super isolated issue, and it is something that spans so many different gaps, I think, in services.
Yeah, I would also just add that in our coalition, we had a lot of impacted people who were just released or have been out for many years. And I think it was a lot of like hearing their stories about like what they actually needed and how the release allowance actually works when you come home. Like, sure, you get $200, but technically you don't actually get $200 because some of that money has to go towards repaying back the prison for your clothes and like all of the food that you owe back to them. And so really they can have like $50 at the end of the day, and that still is trying to get them home. So that was also cool to have the impacted people a part of there too.
Very important part of that 200, whatever that amount is. Jyoti, too, for you, like, can you talk about the reentry support and the reentry policy reform that is so important for your organization? And then also, like, how does gate money fit into that?
Sure. As an organization, we envision reentry as a supported process. We are concerned about, the multitude of collateral consequences and the ongoing punishment that impacts individuals that are either arrested or after incarceration. And so for us, we like to see like a cross-section training coordination for folks that are working with individuals inside of prisons. So we want to make sure that providers have knowledge of aging, trauma, brain development, ACE, which is adverse child experiences, and providers that work in the aging, employment, and healthcare sectors understand incarceration and reentry. And as I mentioned earlier, as an organization that works inside of prisons, we staff the welcome centers, so we see family members when they go in, and we see men and women when they're being released. And we understand that the impact of $40, as Errol spoke about, really has limited effect, right? So by the time you get where you're going and have a snack, you pretty much have no income left or no money left. And so it's important for us to really hone in and highlight the fact that $40 for an individual who oftentimes returning from prison has been there for a lengthy amount of time really has an impact on their ability to do well when they come to the community. And we understand that, you know, gate money is equality, it's justice, it's an opportunity for folks that have been away for so long or for any extended period of time, an opportunity to readjust in a fast-paced digital environment. So we really think it's important for, you know, gate money to be looked at and honed on, because there is the budget and there is the money to do it.
100%. Thank you both so much. I appreciate you bringing your expertise to this conversation and for being a part of the work, the ongoing work of getting this legislation passed. I will actually pass it now to my colleague, Alyssa Bradley, and she'll take us into the next part of our event and talk about our proposal.
Thank you, Simone, and thank you everyone for joining tonight and being a part of prioritizing this. As Simone said, my name is Alyssa Bradley, and I'm a Senior Policy Associate at CEO. So CEO's approach to advocating for gate money is simple. Part of our goal is to connect more justice-involved individuals to immediate economic resources as they return to their communities from the criminal legal system. So we're challenging the state of New York to provide and increase the amount of gate money that individuals are entitled to upon their release. I think we can all agree that the cost of a bus ticket in the 1960s is not a sound basis for determining the amount of initial reentry support someone needs. So with that, we're proposing to increase gate money to a minimum of $2,600. Now, this amount is not random. It was calculated using federal data on the cost of food and housing per the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Living Wage Calculator to find the average monthly expenses for a single adult with no children living in 2021. We also propose that this amount be adjusted annually to account for inflation. This can ensure that there'll be a consistently fair nominal amount for individuals long-term. State-provided gate money can act as a buffer to meet gaps in public services and nonprofit services, and increasing the amount can diffuse the urgency for individuals during a time in their life when there's many barriers to address. And to speak more on the evidence in our work so far in cash assistance, I'm going to pass it over to CEO's president, Samra Haider.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for staying on and listening through all this. And I think what I'm excited to tell you about is giving folks $2,600, $2,700 is not something that's untested or we don't know about. CEO actually has a great experience in deploying that amount of money to thousands of individuals and with great success. And so it's probably hard to think back to COVID. Many people don't want to think about that time. But I'm sure you all can agree that one of the prevailing feelings at that time was uncertainty. And for CEO staff, and more importantly, our participants and other reentry providers and their participants, those fears were amplified. We were learning that many people might be released into conditions where they couldn't even work. Even CEO who runs transitional work crews, we thought we might not be able to run those crews and pay folks a wage. So returning home is always a challenge. And that's in the best of circumstances. The threat of COVID made this concept of returning seem even more challenging and even more critical that we come up with a solution for what people might be returning home to and extra supports. And so that's how the idea of RCS, the Returning Citizen Stimulus Program, grew. If people coming home had no access or difficult access to work, and COVID-related support from the federal government was questionable, right? Like, were they going to admit people who were coming home from prison or with felony convictions from gaining access to stimulus payments? We thought it was an opportunity for CEO and our partners to offer a solution that could mitigate some of the downsides of coming home during this time without committed financial support. So in April of 2020, the CEO conceived of this idea and implemented the Returning Citizen Stimulus Program in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We ended up distributing over $24 million directly to participants across the country, in particular in 7 different jurisdictions, New York City, of course, being one of them. It's the largest ever conditional cash transfer program to formerly incarcerated individuals. In New York, CEO of the Fortune Society, the Osborne Association, CASES, and the Exodus Transitional Center partnered to distribute almost $4.4 million in cash assistance to over 1,700 individuals in just 6 months. And most important to this, obviously it's exciting to be able to do something like that so quickly, but really it's what did we learn from this? You know, a lot of talk is out there with, oh, if you give people money, you know, these sort of bad things will happen, but we actually found quite the opposite. So we saw increases in full-time employment for folks who receive these payments. And not only that, the ability to accept employment at higher earning potential. We also saw individuals moving into stable housing sooner, increases in spending on necessities and recurring staples such as food, transportation, utilities, ability to pay off justice-related debt, and more importantly, a feeling of confidence, security, well-being that might not have existed without those payments. Again, payments that should exist as we are talking about at any time, but certainly in a time of such upheaval like COVID-19. And so just, again, I don't want to go back there for too long, but we did want to share some stories about that and the impact of the RCS program with some of our partners and our goals to reach even more returning New Yorkers with meaningful support. So I want to introduce some of our partners to give their take on things. Joining me are Rachel Lewis from the Osborne Association and Andre Ward of the Fortune Society. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for joining me. And I know we've heard a little bit about what each organization does, but would love to hear what you all do at both Fortune and Osborne. So maybe Rachel go first and then Andre.
My name is Rachel Lewis, and at the time of the stimulus program, I was a transitional counselor for Osborne Association, working with individuals coming home from incarceration. And one of my job duties was working with individuals coming home and going into the transitional hotels.
And my name is Andre Ward. I'm the Associate Vice President of the David Rothenberg Center for Public Policy at the Fortune Society. The Fortune Society has been around for about 55 years or so doing reentry and advocacy work. And, we do this based on our mission, which is consistent with our values. And that's really strengthening communities by promoting alternatives to incarceration and supporting people's successful reentry from incarceration. So we'll strengthen the fabric of our communities. And we do this in a number of ways, but in the end, it's about us believing in people's capacity to change, building people's lives through service provision, and then educating people through our advocacy efforts, right? To really change conditions that harm the people that we serve, and ultimately to overhaul and change the criminal legal system through our advocacy efforts. So really excited to be here, and thank you so much.
Thank you. So Rachel, you mentioned kind of what you were doing a little bit during COVID. Can you talk a little bit more about what it was like for your participants coming home during the pandemic?
Well, I would say that Errol wrapped up everything in regards to talking about the feelings and emotions that individuals go through coming home. I know I could say for myself that working with the individuals coming home, there was a high fluctuation of individuals going into the hotels. And at this point in time, they were being placed in hotels, but then all agencies in the community were closed down. So Social Security was closed down, HRA offices was closed down, birth certificate offices was closed down, everything for which they get their daily needs or be able to access whatever little resources they can was closed down. No accesses to regular phones, everything that you could think of for an individual coming home, and then think of coming home to a place that you could have been incarcerated for over 25, 30 years, 40 years, and you're coming home to a whole different environment. New York City did not look like New York City. You have technology issues. You have nowhere to stay. You're not sure. If you can't get into the hotel, you're trying to get into a shelter. You're seeing the shelters. You see people using drugs, paraphernalia around you. So at times, individuals have feelings of depression, anxiety, hopelessness. The trauma that they experienced in the past was now coming back. So it's a lot of what the participants was feeling and not having an avenue or a safe space where they felt that they could go, which is what I try to do in my daily duties, is just be who I am and try to assist them in any way, form, fashion that I can, and having those resources to put them in those places. Could you imagine telling somebody who may have just gotten an HRA benefit that in order for you to get your Social Security card, that this benefit that you're expecting to get food stamps on within the next 45 days or possibly 90 days, or maybe may go into 180 days, that I need you to send this to an office someplace in Washington, D.C., and then you're not going to have no way to get your benefits. So those are just little things that individuals have to face coming home.
Right, and you're touching upon it, but just in that time, how did that financial support end up helping you and your efforts, but more importantly, your participants during that time?
First of all, it was shocking to the participants that somebody even was going to invest in them to give them that type of resources. But I'm going to tell you one thing, that the eyes, the voices, I'm communicating with people through phones, and you're not seeing them face to face, but they're feeling this trust. They're investing in you to know that you're going to provide these resources to them. Just everyday things, just for a Metro card, to buy a pair of pants, for some boots, to buy deodorant. Those little things that we take for granted, they honor every day. Disinfected, spray, like think masks, face masks, like something that you would think would be freely given to them is not being given to them. It's not being, the resources is not being there. Metro cards, cell phones, different things. You know, I would give one thing about Osborne, that's one of the resources that we know, like in order for somebody to get in contact with their parole officer, if they had to meet their mandates in regards to going to groups, everything was done electronically through phones. They needed phones. And this funding came in. I've had individuals where it helped them get a room because they couldn't go to shelter or because they wasn't able to make it into the hotel in time. So that paid for a hotel room. It's helped individuals coming home that had no connection to their family, but now their family was struggling. People was losing jobs. That funding helped them help their wife pay rent, something that they've never done before because they never had a job. They was incarcerated for over 10 years. It helped somebody to plan his child's first birthday party after being incarcerated for 15 years. His child is almost 16 years old. He's never had a birthday party. He's never been able to give his child anything. Those voices and the smiles that you hear on their face is priceless. There's nothing that anybody could tell me that they're not worthy or they shouldn't receive that funding, and to tell me that they come home with $40. They don't even make it to the candy vending machine with the $40 that you give them. Mind you, they have to go to a check cashing place to cash it, so they're not actually even getting the $40. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. That was, I mean, perfectly said. I love how you said they kind of honor that commitment to the money, and they honor it by, you know, all the different choices they make, which are all incredible choices for them. Andre, just shifting gears a little, you know, why does Fortune advocate for reentry support? How do you all talk about that?
I mean, one of the reasons why we fundamentally advocate for reentry support, because it's consistent with our values and it aligns with our mission. The way in which we engage our advocacy work is, one, we look at decarcerative efforts and how we can reduce the amount of people entering into jails and prisons to begin with. Secondly, what are the conditions of confinement? How are people being treated? What are they experiencing? And what interventions are needed to ensure that people are being treated with humanity and dignity? The last thing, which is really consistent with this conversation, is ending barriers to reentry, whether it be making sure that people are not discriminated against when accessing housing, employment, et cetera. And we believe that the money that is being offered now is really a barrier to one successful reentry back into the community. And we know that invariably people who are not able to have the means by which they can sustain themselves while they're living in the community, right, are inclined to be involved in behaviors that will lead them right back into prison. I think your colleague mentioned it earlier. I think 43% of the people are returning back to prison. I think that's over a 3-year period from my recollection. And we can imagine that if you had, for example, a company like Chevrolet or one of these other companies that develops and creates and manufactures cars, put out a product that after 3 years, it comes back and it's recalled because something is wrong with it. We know that you would probably close that entire business down. Similarly, people who are in prison who are supposed to get the rehabilitative supports that they're supposed to and are returning back after 3 years, 43% of so, really speaks to the need of some real change within that system in and of itself. And so we know that the legislation that's looking to be advanced by CEO and others, as we join in collaboration with that, the increase it to $2,600 is a start and a step in the right direction. We know that $2,600 will not suffice, but it is a step in the right direction. And we believe that through the many supports and interventions that we offer at the Fortune Society, that with folk having access to $2,600, it will lessen the likelihood of them going in another direction. So through the wraparound services that we offer, as well as Osborne and many other organizations, we can hold people differently, knowing that they have this amount of money that they're coming home with.
Thank you. And that, I think it's helpful. You said that, and Errol said that almost sometimes the $40 can work in the wrong direction and not help when it's not a sufficient amount of money. And so I'm curious if you can also just talk a little bit about some of the assumptions you think people have about cash support for reentry and ways we can kind of combat some of those more negative messages.
And it's a really good question, because we're now challenged with, in the advocacy world, is countering those narratives, challenging those basic assumptions and debunking the myths around worthiness. Like, who is worthy of what? And I think that sometimes the public perception, which is shaped by a media instrument that seeks to have people think of negatively of folk who have been impacted by the criminal legal system, really supports and sustains that. And so giving people anything upon their release, a lot of people are not interested in that. Well, you harmed someone, you did something wrong, you deserve to be where you are, and you don't need anything. You should be grateful that you're released. And as someone who's formerly incarcerated myself, I know that $40 did not suffice in my transition. And I also knew, however, that I was worthy, obviously, to receive the things that I needed to support myself, because I had intentionally committed myself to wanting to come home to live a life of contribution. But it's the public's perception of who is deemed worthy of something in the face of them making poor decisions in their life that led them to jail or prison to begin with, that interferes with the larger public supporting the need to give more to people. Because the fact of the matter is that if people are given the things that they need upon release, the least likelihood they'll come back to prison, the more it strengthens public safety, which is a lot of times what is touted and heralded in the media around, like, dangerousness, etc. People get what they need, they'll be fine. But if you don't give people what they need, right, it will obviously create conditions that people are back involved in things that will lead them back into prison or jail.
That was great. That was going to be my question, is what you should tell policymakers. So I think that was a great point you made. Andre, Rachel just wanted to give you a chance, if you were to talk to policymakers about why they should support, providing more gate money, what are some of the things you might say to them?
I always know that I think one of the major things in appealing to legislators is that their constituents to whom they're beholden to can obviously feel comfortable with knowing that they'll be safer and that their tax dollars are being invested more effectively. Again, your colleague mentioned earlier about 43% of the people returning back to prison based on taxpayers' dollars. We think about city jails in particular, right? On Rikers Island, it costs almost over $500,000 to jail someone for 1 year, right? That's enough money to provide supportive housing to 13 people. So when you start appealing to legislators and you start talking numbers, right, in dollars and cents, coupled with the idea of their constituents being safe, that appeal and that reasoning could obviously incline legislators to be more supportive of legislation. Because one, it's about money, two, it's about constituents. And if we can continue to appeal to legislators about the need to, one, promote to their constituents that this legislation will make the public safer and their constituents safer, and it will lessen the burden on their tax dollars, we can make some segue and some progress, or headway rather.
Thank you. And Rachel, your thoughts?
I was just gonna say that, I think it was as Joseph was saying, credible messages. Whether you're individuals who have been just as involved or you have family members, we know that if we invest in the individuals that we service, we know that they change. Those success stories that you go and you tell instead of always fluttering the media with the negativity. So there's living proof. We're living proof. I'm just as involved myself. And the reason why I continue to do the work that I do is because I know that there's somebody that's out there like me that maybe never had that opportunity or the direction for somebody to show that they actually believe in them and that they could see something different in them. And when we invest in each other, we only can show more through our actions. As leaders, we walk the walk, we talk the talk. And if you go out there and you give back to your community and you show through your actions, then they'll see that no, it's not just every crime story that you see of a person that returned home. There are individuals out here doing what they need to do and investing in others to make better people and help our community build up stronger.
Perfectly said. Rachel and Andre, I thank you for joining me and for your ongoing partnership and support for returning people across the state and in New York City in particular. And I know we are running long, but I appreciate everyone for hanging with us because it's such great stuff in here. So I'll turn it over to Simone to take us into the next portion of our event.
Thank you, Samara. I appreciate it. I did want to just say we've heard from really incredible voices tonight, and I know that we have run a little bit long, but I think you can tell there was actually so much more that we could have said about this issue. It affects so many people. Mass incarceration is such a wide net, and there's such an urgent need to do something about it. So to kind of close us out for our event today, we actually are going to make an ask of everyone who is here. You may have noticed a link in the Eventbrite when you registered or RSVP'd for this event. We are actually holding this event not just to raise awareness and to elevate the voices of folks who've been through this experience, but we are really, really wanting to introduce legislation and really hoping to build some momentum and are asking for you to sign a petition. The link that we just dropped in the chat is a short link. You can click that link and it will take you to a form. And that form will allow you to insert your name, your zip code, and your why you would like to see gate money increased. If you're able to do it on your phone or on any device that you're on, to use that space, please speak from your heart and share why you believe that the state should provide adequate resources for people who are trying to rebuild their lives, why we should not be asking someone to return their own funds, $40 worth at that, to start over. Please use that link. And once you submit that link, you'll also see a form that will allow you to sign up to track this campaign and to get involved with us much more broadly. We want to do this work in many, many, many states. We don't just want to do it in New York, but in particular, we believe that introducing gate money legislation that asks the state to provide the support is a really great way to start and to get the resources in the immediate hands of people who need them the most. So as we close out this event for tonight, please use this link and don't just fill out the form yourself, share the link around, text it to a friend, text it to a colleague or a coworker. Whether they're impacted or not, we very much want to get 200 signatures in, and we are already close to 100 in this short hour that we've all been together. So as we close out today, I want to thank all of you for joining us and being a part of this momentum. This is the first of many steps we hope to take. CEO, in addition to our partners, the Fortune Society and Osborne Association, as well as all the advocates that you've seen here today, are doing ongoing advocacy work to pass cash assistance legislation and to raise the awareness about this issue. So if you fill out the petition and you see the link to the next form, you fill out that form, then you can also follow that work wherever you are. I want to thank you all so much again for joining us for Increased Gate Money, and please have a good rest of your night.